Hello and welcome back to the Choice Wisdom Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Gail Goodman Lynch,
And I'm your other co-host, Louisa Garrett.
and we are here with a special guest this time around who we are super excited to speak to. Her name is Lena McDearmid, and she has an amazing story to tell about how she's gone through the journey of high performance in business, like so many of us do, and made a few interesting choices along the way that are creating the life that she wants through those choices. So, Lena, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much,
Welcome.
Gail, Louisa. I'm so glad to be here and be a part of the conversation today. So thank you.
Yeah. And we were just talking about this before we hit record. We're like, we're just going to have a conversation because
Right.
what's great about our podcast is that we're not here to promote anything. We're not here to really talk business, although we talk business a lot.
Yep.
We're just here to talk about how people authentically live
Yeah.
and the choices they make that, create a life of purpose and meaning. And you have done some interesting work there. So I would love for you, rather than read your bio like you're going on for a TED talk, I thought we're just going to ask you first to
Okay.
give us, sort of that perspective of how you started at a startup company in your mid 20s. You moved on to founding another company, and now you founded yet a third company. Would love to hear more about how that came about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it wasn't planned. That's how most of
Okay.
all of the things happen. I know in my early career, when I first moved to Atlanta, I didn't even know I was in a startup at the time. I didn't know the word startup. And so I had been in finance, I'd been in banks, I'd worked for some pretty large banks and pretty large organizations, and I liked it. It was very safe. But I was at that place in my early to mid 20s where I wanted to climb. I wanted to grow. I wanted to
Yes.
learn how to be a career woman. Like I was extremely excited. It was the whole reason I moved to Atlanta from South Georgia, Americas. And so that was my selection first. It's like I got to get out of the small town. I got to move into the big city, and that's going to start in finance because that's what I already sort of had a small job in. And that's how it began. And after I was in CarMax Auto Finance, which is the bank side of CarMax, which I didn't even know that was a thing, but that's where I was for years. And I kind of got ready to do something else. And I got recruited by a company called Green Sky, which at the time was tiny, really little. And I didn't know it was a startup. Again, did not know what that world meant. I was not technical. I had never been in technology. I had only been like banking, entry level work, right? Underwriting. And it started. And I remember when I got into it, I was like, whoa, this is different. Thing moves fast. Like you can make decisions and then act on them, and it changes, and you can be a part of things, and you can really put your fingerprint on everything. And so that for some people maybe sounds crazy. I loved it. I loved how small and fast paced it was. And I remember sometimes going, is it still going to be here tomorrow? Like, how do we know the paychecks are going to clear? Because that's part of it too. That's the part. And I know that now as a two-time founder, it's like you don't always have that runway of income and stability. And that's part of it. I didn't know that at the time. But I wound up joining them and just had such a fantastic journey for 7 years, building a really great company with them and getting the opportunity inside of a startup that's really growing pretty outrageously. I got to do a little bit of everything. And so I call it my gladiator school because I started in one role, but gosh, the next year I'd do another job and then another job. So I got to really evolve me, Lena, as a person in my career because I would raise my hand and say, I'll do that. I'll do it. I'll learn how to do it. Even though I'd gone to school and college does not teach you what that taught me. It didn't. And
At
so
all.
that's at all. Like I have a
College is great
marketing
though.
degree. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It's great for structure. It's great for system and
Yeah.
having that kind of next thing. But for when it came to me walking into a job and knowing how to do it and being an expert, nothing taught me better than hands-on and
Yeah.
allowing myself to get really comfortable making risks and like being like, I'll do it. I'll figure out how to do it. It's not going to be great the first time. But after a while, it flexed the muscle and I loved it. And so I spent, those first 7 kind of core like career years in a fantastic startup that grew substantially. And we went through so many substantial pillars like valuations, unicorn valuation, which I'd never known that term before I got there. And I was like, what are we talking about? A unicorn? Why? And then I was like, oh, $1 billion valuation. That's impressive. That's a milestone. And so that's where it sort of started, and then the company went from that to an IPO, which is another milestone that most people don't get an opportunity to be a part of. And so there's a lot of learning and growth and speed and humble and all of the things that happened. But I was ready for something else after that. I spent, 7 years inside of that, and learning how to kind of figure out what I wanted to do next was terrifying because I'd gotten so comfortable in that place. I had so many friends. I'd been there for 7 years. You get really close to individuals in a startup, different than any other kind of organization that I've experienced.
I can see that, yeah.
It builds different. You may be
Yeah.
doing 18-hour days, but you're doing it because you believe in it so much
Right.
that you are kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the family of it.
You're
And
in the
so
trenches
there
of it.
was, yeah, you're in the trenches of it. So there was a fear too of leaving. And what would
Mhm.
it mean if am I leaving? Am I crazy? What am I going to do? And so after the IPO, I took time because I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. I had been in tech now for 7 years. I'd been in finance now at this point for, 15. I'm like, I can do something. Two of my will soon to become co-founders, we would meet up and we're like, we can do this. Like we can figure out how to build another company in the tech industry, in the finance space that also allows us to kind of own the other pieces. Like I had been an employee, right? I had never been the
Sure.
founder at the prior. So your influence is different, even if you grew up in the organization. And it was really important to me that the rung on the next company that I worked in or founded was really going to value culture. Because what I had learned in those
Mhm.
years before at Greens, but also even before, was as an employee doing the work and showing up and being successful and giving all and innovating, it really was important to me that the environment with which I was in was really set up to support that and that I
Mhm.
felt good in that organization.
Yes.
I was able to express myself. And so I started to be like, am I crazy? But I really feel like culture's got to be part of what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah. Not crazy. You're not crazy.
But I was young enough and just enough to be like, "No, I'm gonna make this a core pillar in addition to technology, in addition to lending, in addition to building a technology platform for consumers in the home improvement and medical space. Like, I can do all of that with my eyes closed, but now we're gonna do it with culture as a strategic lever because it
Yeah.
mattered to me how people felt inside the organization that I was creating for them." And so that's how I bet on myself a little bit and I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to found it. We're going to build it. We're going to operate it. And then I'm going to figure out how to make culture a strategy and do it. And so that was probably, my shift from a young, very, venture successful with Green Sky employee into the founder space. And that jump is a little nerve wracking because you don't know where your paycheck's coming from. And you're also betting on yourself and you're asking people to come in and believe you and do it with you. But it was fantastic. And I come from a long line of like entrepreneurs, my mom, my grandmother, her sister, my sister, like we've all done it, my dad. So I had seen it done and I'm like, we can do this, but no one prepares you for the weight of that, the
Yeah.
pressure of that.
Kinda
I
like
don't
college, right? Didn't prepare you for, like, working in the real world necessarily, and working in the real world doesn't necessarily prepare you to become a business owner. It's kinda
No,
different.
it doesn't because you're just thinking, "Oh, I'll make decisions, it'll be fine," and that's true too, but then it gets really interesting as a founder and when you start to have more people join your group and there's more
Yeah.
Yeah.
employees, and then you
Yeah.
recognize it's not just you and the employees, it's you, your employees, and their family. And then it's you, your employees, their family, and the investors that are putting money in, and then it just compounds and it compounds,
Mm.
and I
Mhm.
say this now to a lot of the people I mentor, other startup founders. I'm like, get therapy. You need executive founder therapy. Because I didn't. People told me that I was like, you're crazy. I'm fine. I should have had therapy in the first couple of years, especially when we were growing. But I would take none of it back. Like it made me better. It made me a more empathetic leader. It made me very aware of my failures because you get to see them in real
Yes, they're
time,
very obvious.
very obvious. And as a recovering people pleaser and perfectionist, it really challenged a lot of my comfort being in that role. So,
Yeah.
Moment was amazing and it was that journey. And then after 6 years at Moment, and we were the fastest growing company in Atlanta in 2023. We
Wow.
had grown, yeah, it was substantial. We had gone from a small team, a zero, over 2 years to like, or maybe 3 years to 250 people.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
In
you
3
don't prepare
years?
for that. It's a lot of growth, and it was post-COVID, and things were crazy and wild in that market. And so you're riding some waves and things, we grew fast, sometimes too fast. That's the area I now
That
really
happens.
counsel with other companies. And that's what Wryver does. It's like that middle, right after you've gotten funding, but before the growth takes off, you've got to kind of reset your skis a bit. And you kind of got
Mhm.
to figure out, is the path that got us here the one that's going to get us to the next thing? And most of the time you need to restructure and kind of
Mhm,
get
mhm.
realigned.
Yep.
Learned that from that journey. And then after about 6 years of that, I'm like, great, I'm exhausted. I really felt I needed to sort of step away. And company still goes and does and becomes successful. I don't have to stay in the conversation. That's also what I tell founders. You don't always stay in your core company after you create it. In fact, 98% of all founders leave their organization.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
'Cause
which
it
is
it
sad. I get
outgrows the need for a founder. It becomes an established business
exactly. Like once the
separate.
founder's there in the beginning to pour in the strategy, to give it the love and the direction. But
Yep.
once it gets on its feet ish, it needs different leadership.
It
And
really
and
does.
Yeah.
sometimes you're just tired. Like I'm an operator. It was time for the handoff. And culture was really important to me. And I've been doing it as, in addition to being a co-founder and the COO at the moment, I also was a chief culture officer, and I recognized leaving moment. I'm like, I really want to figure out how to take this secret ingredient that's not so secret and share it with other companies and other
Yeah.
leaders and help them recognize that this is a numeric value culture is, and it has a direct impact on the success of you, your team, your outcome of your business. And I wanted to put it into conversations with people that I was already meeting with. And then that's how Wryver was born, and it's culture architecture. And I work with a great team of people, and that's what we do. And it's my favorite part of building anything is kind of the sticky part where things get really tense. And what do we do and what's going on here and how do we work through this and what's the culture of it really doing to help, make that better or not. So a long answer to your question, Gail, but that's sort of the direction that I wound up in my career. That's the steps that we tripped into.
Steps you took. So I have to ask though, so the second time you left an organization,
Yeah,
you started to feel the pressure, the burnout, the heaviness,
yeah.
and the recognizing and being mature enough in business now to recognize it's time for
Mhm.
the founder to step away and
Yeah,
someone
Yeah.
else to take the reins. And then I'm going to go do something different and continue to use what I know.
yeah.
But that first time you left, so there was the
Mhm,
IPO, but what
mhm.
was going on inside
Yeah,
that made you realize, "Okay, it's time for me to move on," because there
yeah.
really wasn't just because of the IPO didn't mean you had to leave.
No, that was
Right,
just a
right.
really good chapter end. That's a very that was a like, "Okay, I have now figured out, like, I've been a part of that. That's awesome. That's cool. That's a nice bookend." I've been thinking about it probably a year or so prior to leaving that first time because I had been in it, and I call it like a 7-year itch. That's sort of the duration for most people before they start to think again
It's a
about
good one.
Yeah.
wanting to do something different, right? And that was what it was tracking, but really to answer it more directly is my body had been keeping score of burnout for years.
Mm.
It had
Yeah.
been very much aware that, like I said, I'm a recovering perfectionist and I love to participate and people please. And so I would give so much. I would do,
Mhm.
not that I was being asked, but it was certainly allowed. I was
Mhm, mhm.
overdoing. I was tired. I was exhausted. And I began to recognize patterns in myself that I didn't like anymore. And I used to say, if I stay long enough, I'm going to become the person I don't want to be.
Yeah.
Mm,
And I need a
Yeah.
break. I need to reset and I need to move away from the situation. And so I know this to be true now. I'm really good at identifying when I need to leave and I'm really good at leaving now. And that was the first hard leave I did in my career that was
Mhm.
emotionally difficult,
Yeah.
financially difficult, all of that. But the truest answer is I wasn't okay anymore. I
Mhm.
didn't feel like me and I wasn't feeling creative. And that's also another signal I tell people. It's not just your body keeps score, but you also should be able to notice, do you feel creative anymore? Does anything
Yeah.
inspire you? And
mhm.
when that gets turned down, that's really good signal to pay attention to be something is dulling me. Something
Yeah.
is kind of suppressing that sparkle that we all have. We all have creative energy. And when it gets quiet, it's normally because fear has crept in, exhaustion has crept in, something else is holding it.
Right.
It was absolute terror, but I knew I couldn't stay. Like I was scared to
Mhm.
leave, but I was not going to be who I wanted to be.
Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
like the fear of the new or the fear that comes with, okay, I don't know how to even start a business, but I'm going to figure it out
Yeah.
is less scary than the person you already became, like
Yeah.
staying stuck where you were.
It's a new fear, and I'm okay with new scare. I would
Yeah.
have been
Mhm.
disappointed had I felt the same way and then had the same conversation with myself a year later and nothing, and I
Yeah.
wasted that time.
Yeah.
And there was something comforting about leaving, and then when we started Moment, it was after I'd left, we had had some time. It made it
Yeah.
easier when I did it with 2 other co-founders. There's
Mhm.
comfort in the fear,
Mhm.
and I knew them and I trusted them, which another thing I love is when co-founders actually are friends and actually have relationship with each other. It does work different. The dynamic of that leadership, the trust in it is unmatched. And so that's why it felt less scary, even though it was brand new. I'm a big fan of like the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. And sometimes you just have to take the next step, just the next one. And
Mhm.
it worked out. It doesn't always, but you either learn or you win, right?
Yeah. And so
I
with
love that.
River, how does
Mhm.
that work with companies you're working with now? What's the structure of that? It's like, how do you package that up and actually get someone else to get it?
Well, what I first noticed before I even kind of put pen to paper on River is after I left Moment and was sort of taking my sabbatical, I was getting pulled and asked to come in and consult, which I'd always sort of had for the last 10 or 15 years. People would bring me in for different things. And so I started to pay attention like, well, what are the things that people are asking my opinion or advice on? And I started to notice, and I was like, most often it was, hey, the operation of the company isn't working, or things are harder than they should be, or I need you to help me figure out my next leader hire, little stuff like that. And I tell people all the time, I love a dumpster fire. Send me directly to it. I love straightening it out. I love figuring out the problems. I love pattern recognition. I'm extremely neurodivergent in pattern recognition, and that's sort of where my brain goes to. And
Uh,
so
you're a kindred soul. I'm the same.
yeah, I love it. Almost to the point that I know people are like, "She's so annoying. She sees things too much." And I recognize it. It's not a toxic trait, but it is a trait.
It is.
And it can get hyper influenced when I'm anxious and I can get
Yeah.
real wrapped around. But the superpower is there. And so people would, continue to reach out to me. And finally I said, you know what? I'm going to put together an advisory firm. I've got a lot of great people in my network, on my bench, as I call it, that we could come in together and solve a lot of these problems for these small to medium sized organizations. Instead of them having to hire like a full team of new employees or et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, let me just come in and see. Like, I don't want to stay forever. I don't want to permanently embed. I just want to understand what you think your problem is. And
Yeah.
most of the time, what I found was when I would go in or my small team would go in, what they thought their reason for not being successful was, what they thought their reason for it being so difficult was rarely what the outcome actually proved to be. It
Yeah.
wasn't,
Mm.
it wasn't the product. It wasn't the market fit. It wasn't the amount of money that they had of runway left. It most often always was some version of conversation, clarity, collaboration,
Yeah.
psychological safety, and accountability. It always continued to come back to these core truths about how people interact with each other and
Yep.
how
Mhm.
they feel safe
Yeah.
in those interactions.
Business would work perfectly if it weren't for people.
Right. Or if it would all work perfectly if people could really feel safe enough to express
Yeah.
Exactly.
big, bold
Yeah.
ideas, big bets on things, or also be
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I didn't like the way you handled that meeting with me, and I felt I felt like you talked over me or like all of that
Yeah, where
information.
someone feels safe enough to say that
To
out
say
loud
that.
in
Yeah,
service
Yeah.
of everybody else's benefit rather than someone getting threatened by hearing that.
and it's so
Yeah.
hard,
That's
and
a
it
leadership problem.
it require exactly, and that's what I kept getting very aware of when I would have these great opportunities to be invited into these organizations or small team compositions, and it continued to show up. I'm like, okay, all right, this is
Mhm.
what we're supposed to be here for, and I now know to be true that this is the mission.
Yeah.
Is restructuring the way that work feels and interacts, and that it's not the older model that's like top-down leadership, tell me what to do, I go do it, pushback is threatened. It just became we now turn over almost every old model and go, "This doesn't really work anymore. Okay, let's rebuild it and let's talk about it." And so River kinda came from just true data and requesting and just seeing it, And then now when people interact with us, they'll normally engage. They'll send, normally it's through network. It's a lot of introductions through other
Yeah.
clients or other people. And I'll come in, or one of my teams will come in and do an assessment. And then we'll
Mhm.
say, do you want us just to do like one-on-one leadership? You can have me, you can have another person, or do you need us to work on a small project with you? And so it depends on the engagement type, how much effort they want. I've had some people bring us completely in and do a long-term engagement because they're doing a transformation to AI, right? So it depends
That's
on what,
scary for people
yeah,
too, because then they think they're losing their jobs, or they think
right.
fundamentally change and snatch away all their empowerment.
And a lot of that is you've got to be honest about some of it's true.
Some of it is true, but
And
it
some of
opens
it's
up the
true.
door for other things though, right?
Right. It doesn't mean you may lose that job, but it doesn't mean if we can't upskill you, train you, teach you the tools, teach you the systems, and help you understand how it can work with you, not against you.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
opportunity for that, but you've got to also hold the space for them to be scared in front of you, and you go, I understand.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
valid.
Yeah.
Like I
Fun.
I
And not
understand those
shame them
feelings.
for it, right? I
Never.
That is such an old corporate way of doing things. It's like,
So
to show a weakness was shameful.
Right.
and
Right.
Felt like you were gonna be punished.
And it takes brave leadership too. That's what I am really most excited about now, this current time in 2026, more than I was in
Mhm.
2020, is I think we're now open to the language more. I think
Mhm.
we are collectively, as a workforce of leaders, employees, doers, founders, investors, all of that, far more open to believing the model isn't working anymore. We don't know quite what makes it better, but we know what has happened is not what we're looking for anymore. And that makes me excited, and I'm able to now go in and talk about leadership getting redesigned and culture being a
Mm.
strategic business asset that you can track as a KPI. Like, you can put math on it, and
Yeah.
that allows the CFOs to believe it, right? Then that
Yeah.
allows, if you can give it a
I'm
numeric value,
so
they
on
give
board.
themselves
Yeah.
permission to believe that culture is not a soft asset.
And
And
invest in
then
it.
once we align with a spreadsheet, then everything else is just business advice and strategy and execution. And then what Wryver does differently than some of the other organizations that are also still trying to do the good work of redesigning culture. Like, there's room for us all. Like, welcome. Let's all do it. But what we do a little bit different is we're part of the implementation too. Like, we're going to stay with you and we're going to work with you, and I'll bring team and I'll work with your team, and we'll figure out how to do what makes the most sense for your organization. But the whole time, what we're doing really is culture. We're architecting it, we're redesigning it with you in collaborative
Yeah.
spaces.
Yeah, you guys are probably meeting people with something very fundamental. This just came to mind as you were saying that. It's like you were talking about college doesn't prepare you for the workforce doesn't prepare you for business ownership. And none of us are really prepared to move from the patriarchal top down model of business without some help, because theoretically it all makes sense, right? Oh, we should totally do that. But in
Yeah,
practice, everybody falls back into the same
it's
habit.
programming,
Yeah.
Are
right?
comfortable.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
program.
It goes to the default until someone gives you a new model and then models it with you holding your hand. Like,
Yep.
you we cannot scare people into the new. I'm okay if you're like, oh, my career was in patriarchy. I've been in finance and technology. Like, we
It's
built
both
the infrastructure
patriarchy.
that we sort of need to dismantle and redo.
Yeah.
And most people aren't even doing it intentionally, right? They
No.
just don't know a different way of doing it. So we meet them without shame or blame, or it's just like, hey, great. Thanks for noticing that you want to fix it. That's my favorite thing. Just
Yeah.
admitting like you might need help takes you 80% of the way.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
there,
said, you need that therapist or a
yeah,
coach. And it's like, this is
yeah,
why therapy and coaching are such big industries right now, because people
yeah.
are finally starting to get it. It's like, it's not just on me. I can ask for help.
And
Yeah.
there's just
Right.
more of us talking, just like you guys are doing right now with this
Yep.
conversation. It creates the movement. And I do believe Wryver is becoming, it is a movement. It's the larger conversation, which I want to
Yeah.
dismantle the entire old system of how corporate America and business work felt like, and
Yeah.
reteach it, retrain it, reconstruct it collaboratively with other people. Like, that is my, I say to people all the time, purpose on planet. Like, I would do it for free, but River's gotta, she's gotta eat. So we gotta
Oh,
unfortunately
yeah.
charge people.
Everybody's got to make a paycheck in the end of
Yeah, we
it.
gotta pay each other. That
It's not
said,
Star Trek, right?
yeah, but it's
Where they have no
important.
money
Like,
and everybody just does stuff for fun.
yeah, I wish I could. And I
Wouldn't that be
have for
cool?
a very long time. But the individuals that are coming and the leaders that are seeking us out or that are introducing us get it.
Mhm.
They understand it enough to be like, there's something here. Most people are curious. They lean in a lot. Not everybody's our client. That's okay. Not yet. you know?
Yeah.
But part of the conversation is having the conversation and teaching people and showing them the
Mhm.
metrics and showing them the performance of it and showing them what it does for the employees inside your organization when they have culture that has been architected with psychological safety, accountability, and trust. It
Yeah.
changes it.
You gotta
Yeah.
get that left brain engaged
Mhm.
first with
Yeah.
the facts and the figures to convince, right? You
Right.
gotta validation, but your heart is gonna tell you what's really right, and it's
Mhm.
what I love about business now personally, and it sounds like
Mhm.
you're leaning into this and your clients are too, is that
Yeah.
we're allowing the feminine energy in and not
Mhm.
just the masculine.
Right.
We
Yeah.
all
Right.
have both.
Yep.
That feminine energy is really more that intuition, that, recognizing when there's a need for rest to allow
Mhm.
for space for creativity. That's
Mhm.
where innovation comes from, is that
Right.
feminine side.
Right.
It's not
Right.
from slogging up the hill, pulling a ton of
That's
rocks behind you. I
and
mean, that kind of thing doesn't work. But it
no.
works to get
Right.
the stuff done though. Like you
To get the
identify
Yeah.
what
stuff
needs to get
right, right,
done,
right.
boom, do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I think what's beautiful about the feminine side is, the females and women and that energy, we're collaborators. We like to create environments.
It's
We're
the
very much
Yes.
collaboration.
container creators and holders. And then the masculine in its divine is very good at like executing and doing and being in the activities of it all. And both of them together are necessary. We do need to balance it, but we need to kind of over index back to the feminine a bit because we need to especially now in 2026 with everything that's going on in the world. We
Especially
need
now.
community.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
need community. We need people who make sense. And we need people who recognize the energy and the value of humans and
Yeah.
recognize that the diversity of us all is what makes it so amazing. Like
Right.
I used to say, and I now correct myself, I used to say we need to look for culture fits in our organization so they fit our culture. That's not the right way to say it. I call it culture adds. I want to add someone to my organization that is different, that's going to add a different
Ooh.
way of thinking, who's going to
Yeah.
add a different rebuttal to the conversation. Because
Mhm.
I've created safety, I want someone different because if I'm just listening to me with a bunch of other people in my zipped up, vest and I'm working up in New York street, and everybody looks like me, everybody talks like me, I'm bored with
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah,
that's
Right.
yeah,
not
yeah.
performing well. And so we need to have in this current day and age people comfortable with difference, collaboration, conversation. And that's really how we take us into like I think in the next 2 years, you're going to see a significant shift in the way
Yeah.
work happens
I agree.
and the way leaders are actually evaluated.
It's gonna have to. I mean, it's gonna have to
We're
change.
frustrated.
Like,
It's going to have to,
right.
or we're revoking and we're just going to go back to the barter system. Like, I work with a lot of wonderful founders and women entrepreneurs, fantastic, brilliant women in different areas of industry, but we all share the same thing. Not all of us, when we're working together on projects, pay each other. We exchange our services instead of
Yeah.
money. And that was something I didn't even think of. I was like, look at us supporting each other because I believe in your business. You believe in mine. I can give you my skill set. You can share yours. And we've just amplified each other. And we didn't have to use a single swipe. We didn't have to pay an interchange fee.
Right.
We
Yeah.
just shared our brilliance. And
And hey, here's the brilliant thing. You didn't have to pay tax on it either.
that's it. And nobody's watching me and knowing where my money's going. And I didn't have to involve any
Right.
of the financial system.
IRS is now gonna audit me just 'cause
Right.
I said that. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
And
yes, you
I
can
think that's
barter.
exciting, and I see that being kind of the next evolution for a lot of individuals who are tired of the
Mhm.
grind. They're like, "I'm gonna become an entrepreneur myself, and I'm gonna sell my services to other organizations who need a social media manager. I'm gonna do that for a couple of customers, or I'm gonna do it for finance." I have a lot of people that are doing HR, but they're doing it for other small startups. They're not doing just one. Like, so people
Mhm.
are becoming solopreneurs within their own skills, and then they're marketing themselves to other organizations that they believe in. And that I'm excited for that to happen. I'm really excited for the individualness of people versus feeling like they have to always be an employee
You mentioned earlier that you were a perfectionist and you participated in people pleasing, is the way you coined that. And I love
or
that.
covering.
What was that change? What made you decide, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. Not for me.
Because it didn't work and nobody
Yeah.
appreciated it. And I was exhausted. And I think I threw myself into an MS flare when I was 30
Yeah.
because I couldn't let it go. It mattered so much more to me what people thought of me than what it did to me. And nobody's fault but mine. I didn't have boundaries. I didn't know boundaries. I thought that was how my value was assessed. Like if
Mhm.
I could do more, give you more, please you so much, you're going to see my value. You're going to pay me accordingly and you're going to promote me. Doesn't happen like that.
No, they just siphon more. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
she's gonna,
They're
she's
like, this
gonna,
is great.
Yeah,
I
thank
remember
you.
being
Keep going.
yeah. They were like, "Thank you, keep going." And now I can see it in other people, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's hustling for your worth." I have been a hustle for my worth girl. I've done it. I understand it. But I remember one time a CEO was interviewing me to come and join her company, and I was like, "I'm a recovering people pleaser," and she's like, "I love a people pleaser," and I'm like, "That's a red
Yeah.
flag. No, thank you."
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't take the job.
She missed the recovering part.
Yeah, there's
She
one little word in there that
He
didn't
was
get
Yeah,
gonna
there was
be
a
another one of the people going, "Yay, that means I can get probably 60 hours a week out of her versus 40 or whatever." Like,
yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
you said it was not expected in your first job, but it was
yeah,
allowed because
it
you
was
just
allowed.
kept doing it. They're like, "Okay, you can keep doing it." And yeah, I've had employees that literally would work 24 hours a day if I
Yeah,
let them, which
yeah,
I don't,
yeah,
because I want them to be fully formed humans
right. But you don't
and
but
take
you
care of
know
them.
that now, but did
Yeah.
you always? Like, I know I've been
Oh,
a
heck
manager
no. I would have
before,
totally worn those people to the
worn them
nose.
out because I was
Oh,
driving.
come on.
I was the same way. So I'm like, they were just and that's what I know about employees. Like, you're going to follow the cues of your manager, right?
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
your leader does it, then your leader allows it. And then what you allow becomes what the truth is of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that, so I have been both the villain and the hero in all of my stories,
I
good guy
have.
Right.
and the bad guy. Like, I am not a sacred cow. Like, I am absolutely been the problem. And I now know that's why I can go into organizations of any size and be like, I've been in the seats that you're sitting in, both the good and the
Yeah.
bad side of it. So let me just share some of the experience and let's see how, because all of it's solvable. Every bit of it can be
Every
solved,
single bit
trained,
of it.
every bit of it.
Well, that's the caveat, right? If you want to. You got to put that at the end if you want to.
Yes, if you
That's right.
want. That's all. That's where the choice comes in. You got to make a choice.
Yeah. I used to work in an office where it was just expected to work long hours. So when I left that company, I had still had a really good mentee, and he would call me and say, they were asking me to work through lunch. And I was like, well, what did you say? And he said, well, one of the other people said, why don't you work through lunch? And I said, well, what did you say when they asked you that question? And he said, well, I said, because I want to go eat. And I said, well, that's a very
Simple.
that's a, that's a very good answer. And I was like,
Yeah.
but that was the mentality, as we were talking about, mentality of the workplace and how managers show up. Just because you as a manager are deciding to work through lunch doesn't
Right.
mean that everyone else has to work through lunch. But if that's the system that you have set up and that's your expectation, now you're thinking that he's not doing his job because he's not working through lunch, which is crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is
Right. But
crazy.
it's so which is so true. I used to have a bad habit of Slack, right, is our messaging system.
Yeah.
And I have hours of spurts of brilliance. They're not always between 9 and 5. Sometimes it's 9. Sometimes it could be 7 o'clock at night. I'm putting a thing in Slack to like my chief of staff. And in the early days of our relationship, I would do it because that's my brain was doing a thing. I was getting it out of my brain, putting it in a message. My intention was we would talk about it the next day. But I didn't say that. I didn't tell her that when I put the message at
You
7:50 on
thought
a
you had to read
Tuesday.
it before
Yeah,
bed.
I thought she's gone to bed or she's doing dinner. No, because she's also a high performing badass woman. So she's of course reading it and probably now she's activated and doing and
Yeah.
reacting. So finally, I don't know if I got the feedback. She finally would be like, okay, here's my truth. If I send you anything outside of business hours, I'm going to put before do not action on this. This is for me to drop my information in. We created a spreadsheet actually where I could just dump stuff. It was called like Lena's dump. Like,
Yeah, do a little shared file or something, and
but
it's
it's
not
even that kind
in
of
the
stuff. Like,
moment.
I wasn't intending to be a
Yeah.
bad manager, but I didn't know. And so sometimes I even see in managers, they're unintentionally doing the
Mm-hmm.
thing or letting somebody work through lunch or making that, and they don't understand it. They're not mature enough or aware enough. And so there's a lot of that too. So I call that the people that mean well, but just don't know well. And so
Yeah.
that's when we,
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah,
Uh,
you mean well, but you don't
you
know well.
mean
You
well,
just
and
don't
we
know
just got
well.
to get you to know well. And once you know, you do.
Yeah, I love
Hopefully.
that.
Well, hopefully.
And then if you don't, then you're just not the right person. And then that's a leadership management, that's the next step when we teach coaching and management. And sometimes you manage them out at that role because they're not best suited for it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Maya Angelou has that quote. Well, here's the thing. She's misquoted a lot that says, when you know better, you do better. And that's not the quote.
Mhm.
The quote
Mm.
is, do the best that you can. And when you know better, then do better. because there are a lot
Yeah,
of people who know better but don't do better.
that's
And
right.
so I think that's the caveat. Just because you are assuming people know better, that they're going to action on the do better part. But there are
Right.
people who very well know exactly what they're doing, yet they are not leveling up to the do better part. And
That's right.
it's that do better that we have to work on.
Well, that's the muscle of leadership where it hasn't been in place for many people that have been sitting in the top
Yeah.
of the white ivory towers. And because they don't value a do better monetarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that
That
the awareness is what's really missing,
Mhm,
right? And once
mhm.
you become aware of it, then a lot of people, in my experience, especially in coaching, will start to beat themselves up for having not been aware of it and
Yeah,
doing
it
the
hurts.
wrong thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
In which case, you have to immediately forgive yourself and just recognize,
Mhm.
you know what, the win here is I'm actually now seeing that I do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have the choice to change. And every time I catch myself doing it, I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm getting
Yeah.
out of a habit, the
Mhm.
programming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It
Because
is.
programming, you fall back on default programming until you completely
It
eradicate it.
is. And it
Right.
does hurt. Like when you realize that you've been the problem or been part of the issue or you created,
Right.
workplace toxicity and you get to and you have to play through those stories, it is. It's definitely heavy and you don't get
Yeah.
prepared for that. What I learned in my career too, the more you get to the top or whatever the top is of the ladder, because the ladder's BS, but once you get to whatever that is, because I did not climb a ladder horizontally. I had to lattice up the ladder.
Yeah.
Like, I had to
Yeah. Yeah.
ask
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
every promotion I got, I asked for, everyone. But the more you get higher up the ladder, what I also started to notice, and I would say it all the time, people don't give you feedback.
No,
They don't tell
because no
you
one
that what
beneath
you're
you wants to
doing
tell you that you're not
Mhm.
wearing
that
clothes.
you're not a good manager, that you're hard to deal
Mhm.
with, that you're too critical, that you make it difficult for people to be successful around. Like that people weren't telling me stuff.
But
And I used to
that,
remember being like, I need people to tell me the truth.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
please
need
be
it.
honest because I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
improve. I don't want to be that guy,
I
And
don't
that goes
want
back
to
to the
make your
culture.
job. Yeah,
That goes
It's
back to
it
the
the
does.
culture thing
safety.
and the safety and the fear, because now you have leveled up. You're this manager person. And now I don't think I can talk to you honestly
The same way.
because you are up here. And that's that fear part that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Mhm.
is. And so that's also a thing to be aware of as you move up in your career that the further the gap is between you and maybe the individuals that you lead or manage or coach and advise, the more there may be some level of like they're watering down the truth. They're protecting themselves, protecting you. And I often, when I'm in organizations or we come in, I kind of run through this drill. I'll ask the same question to three different leaders at three different sections of the organization, the same question. And based on the answer from each level, what
Hmm.
the answer is to the exact same question and the distance between those answers tells you the ability of watering down the truth and the gap between safety and accountability and trust. And it's quite
Mhm.
often that what the CEO thinks the truth is and what the manager of the front line thinks the truth is are this far apart.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do more than with clarity and safety. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said around truth doesn't always make its way into the ears of the leaders because they're being protected or the people are protecting themselves from telling the truth.
Yeah. I
Gosh, I
think
love that.
more so protecting themselves because
For sure.
of the fear
Well, in this
of
economy,
losing their job. Yeah. Being
of course,
reprimanded,
in this
all
economy,
of that.
there are more people looking for jobs than there are jobs that have people needs. And that is a
Yeah.
true I was asked to comment on something like that this week. They're like, "What are your thoughts on people being afraid of, losing their job so they don't speak up?" I'm like, "That is valid. That they have that a lot of companies are evaluating how they can get rid of people because they've got expenses, they've got pressure to cut costs, they've got margins they've got
Yeah.
to make. And so if you don't know how you're getting evaluated inside of your organization, then I can understand how people might be afraid that the truth might be one of the things that puts them on a
Yeah.
list and they don't get along well. So then now they're on, I mean, it's
They're on a
valid. And
list. Yeah. 100%
Well,
they're
and
valid.
on the list.
I think too, when we hit economies like this, when there are fewer jobs and there are job seekers, then
Yep.
companies also feel like, okay, well, maybe we could put the culture stuff on hold because the people who are here ain't leaving because they're gonna stay here because they need a paycheck. They can't go anywhere else, and then it just
Yeah.
gets iced. But it's such short-term thinking. This is the thing that drove me nuts about, like, the 1990s and 2000s. It was
Yeah.
every quarter, we're just working toward next quarter's numbers.
Grind,
It's like,
grind, grind.
why are we not working toward 2 years from now's
Yeah.
numbers?
Yeah.
Because the investments you're making now are going to pay off in the future. But that's where we've gotten to this business problem that we're all short-term thinkers. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, we got to fix the problem ahead of us and we don't think ahead. Because it's cyclical because eventually there will be more jobs out there than people to fill them.
Yeah.
And then when your employees are all PO to you and they leave, then you're stuck because you're not going to get anybody to backfill it and your company goes out of business.
Right. Well, the easiest way I handle that now, where people are like, we don't have time or money to focus on culture right now, and nobody's going anywhere because there's no jobs. My answer is like, great, show me how your revenue's doing. How are your milestones? Are you hitting your KPIs? What's your return of investment? And then they start just then
Right.
I'm just talking numbers to them, like, are you getting return of investment? Is your velocity slowing down on your product? Are you seeing a lot of quality problems, and so people are having to rework? That's culture. So if you want to
Right.
meet your numbers, regardless of whether people can leave or not leave, you're not going to hit your numbers to the level that you need to be hit unless you fix your culture. So
Yep.
them being stuck and frozen in space, because that's true too, but you could also get more out of that same small, lean group if you focus on your culture. You'll hit your numbers, you'll hit your revenue, you'll hit your milestones, you'll increase your velocity, you'll have more
Because
accountability.
they're
Like,
happier.
because they're
Right.
happier, and that's why
Competitors
I
aren't
love
doing
it.
You're
I
gonna have
love
They're
it
like,
when people say that. I
I
love
get to
it
go
when they
to I get to go to
disagree.
work today. Yay.
I
Instead
don't have
of
the Sunday scaries today. Great.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
stories.
like, I
Your
love when
stomach starts
people
feeling sick and you get a headache on Sunday
Yeah,
Yeah. And then
when you're
all of a
dreading
sudden it's
it.
like,
that
why?
happens.
I was just fine yesterday. Oh, I have to go to work on
Right.
Monday. Gosh darn
Yeah,
it.
or they're like, "Why don't I feel good?" It's like, 'cause you hate your job
Yeah.
or you're
And your
stuck in your
body's telling
job.
you that.
Yeah,
It's
nobody's
And
feeling safe
that's
enough to
exactly
tell
what you're
you.
talking about because of the KPIs. They're not hitting them.
Mm,
People are there at their desk,
they're
right?
exhausted. Yeah,
But they're
yeah,
not producing because
yeah.
they don't want to be there.
Because they're tired, or now you've made them return to office because the mortgage or the rent on your office space is expensive, and so you just need people in office, but now you're having them commute, and they're coming in from taking their kids, and, like, you've taken them back after having them remote for so long, and so, yeah, they're unhappy. You're not getting the best out of them. You're not getting the best value, and so I continue to love when people say, "Nobody's gonna go anywhere. We're fine." I'm like, "Are you fine? Are you
Mhm.
positive? Are you hitting your numbers? Let
Yeah.
me look with you." Yeah.
Yeah. You nailed like the top one thing you need to look at if you're needing to look at your
Yeah.
culture is how are you doing on your numbers?
How's your business?
How's your
How's your
revenue?
Yeah.
CFO?
How's
Margin?
your
Yeah.
business? Yep. And
How's
if
your
it's not
business?
where you want it to be, something
Yeah.
needs to be
Culture
fixed.
is probably the number
Number
one
one,
place
it
to
is
work.
the quoted all the time, and I try not to miss an opportunity. The Project Aristotle project that Google did several years ago, where they tried to understand why their teams or certain teams that were just great performers, and they could not understand why some teams were better than other teams. They thought it was like the composition of the team structure, the collegiate background, the years of experience. And so they interviewed, I want to say, 250 different teams over 2
Mhm.
years. And the single most important ingredient to a successful team, psychological safety. That's what made them
That's beautiful.
successful.
That's
And
beautiful.
that's it.
Yeah.
The mic, man.
And
And
that's the math. And so
and people use that term and leaders might go, "Oh yeah, how do you foster that?"
Yeah.
that
You know?
is, we can teach
Or
them.
how do you track that?
How do
Yeah.
you track it? How do you foster it? So you can do it in several different ways. We look at it a few different ways. The first thing we're going to come in and do is like, tell me where your tension is. How do people disagree? How do we disagree in this organization? How do
Mm,
decisions get made? Is it always the same people that have the sphere of influence and nobody can penetrate that? Well, then
Mhm.
you're encapsulating, you're blinding yourself from exposure and people feeling able to disagree with you. So you start
yeah.
to look at it in different ways because it shows up differently, whether it's microaggressions, whether it's disagreeing, whether it's collaboration. Finger
Yeah.
pointing is one of the tackiest tactics I've seen in organizations. So there's ways to track it, and then you can track it through velocity, attrition, regrettable attrition, speed to market, ideas, quality assurance. Like there's so many depending on the area that you're focused on. And
Mhm.
we walk people through, like, we set KPIs, we help them build their KPIs, we tie them to a line item in the budget, and we track the investment and the return on it, and then the impact of the milestones that they set. Like it makes the case closed when you start to show them how it drives people's performance, and then the performance drives the
Yeah.
creativity and how people show up and collaborate and innovate.
Yeah.
And it continues to show the growth. I mean, I think I was reading the other day, the single largest reason for people to leave, like at tax, the rate is not related to salary or burnout. It's toxic culture at a
Yep.
10x. People leave because of culture more than any other reason inside of a job in an organization is the culture, not the money, not the burnout, not the
Yeah.
product, not the it's the way they feel at work.
It's so real. It's so
It
real.
is.
Well, and toxic cultures, like you can spot like a toxic culture if you've got somebody who's like an angry leader, shouts at people, or makes them feel bad, but
Right.
it
Overtly.
has layers to it too.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, it's
Oh,
you
exactly.
talk about the
100%. Yeah.
microaggressions. I interviewed someone the other day for a job in our company and said, I don't dislike my job, but one of the things that is really frustrating, she goes, I'm not going to call it a toxic culture because it's not toxic, but it's that, I showed up the other day. I was 1 minute late by one person's watch, and my watch said 8 o'clock, hers said 8:01. And we spent 10 minutes with me getting harangued about being late and how
Wow.
important it was to be on time. And I thought, God, that's a total waste of energy. It's
It
stuff
is.
like that, though, that makes me
Yeah.
quit. It's like, are you gonna spend 10 minutes arguing about something that's
It's the
literally gonna make
immaturity of
someone.
leadership. I think
Yeah.
it's also a lot of times people are put in leadership roles because they were good at a role. And they're like, well, we're going to elevate them to supervisor. And now they're in charge of 6 more people. And we never taught them how to be a leader. We never taught them how
Yeah.
to coach. We never taught them
It
how to
doesn't
give feedback.
translate. Sometimes it
It
doesn't
doesn't
translate.
always translate. And
Yeah.
not everybody who's good at a job should be in charge of other people. And if you don't like managing people, if you don't like it, do not do it. Do not
Right,
do
and don't promote people just because they've been around for 20 years. That doesn't mean you should be a
Man,
manager
let
because
me
it may
tell
Yeah.
be
you,
your comfort area, and that's
a
okay.
hundred percent,
This
a
whole
hundred
idea that
percent.
everybody has to be something by the time they reach a certain maturity in business or age, and that's I think age discrimination in a way.
Yeah.
It's okay,
Yeah.
well, if you're 50 years old, you should be VP or something. What if you're
I don't want
actually
to be. You might
program?
not want to be. You just I just want to
That's what
collect
you
the
like to
check,
do.
go home. And
Yeah.
I am seeing a lot of times, especially now, that people are not taking the promotion. They're not raising their hand to get the team lead, even if it comes with more income, because
Mm.
there's no value in taking on that additional
Yeah.
I've
responsibility.
heard that
Yeah.
from people. Yeah, they're kinda like, "I took the boss job and I actually made less money because I
And
worked
I hate
twice
it.
as much and
And
I
I
didn't get
hate
the
it.
commissions I had."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
My
yeah.
sister did that. She took a management position and she literally within 2 weeks was like, no, thank you. You can have that back.
Yep. Yeah. I remember wanting to promote this woman. She's fantastic. And we needed a team lead. The team was growing. And we're like, hey, do you want to do it? We really want you to do it. You're the best one at it. She's like, I do not. I do not want to manage people. And we would keep trying to push her. And finally I was like, we need to listen to what she's saying. She
Right.
doesn't want to do it, and putting her in a role she does not want is not healthy.
It's
If you
not
can't
going to be,
convince her into
yeah.
doing it, like, stop. And so that was even me. I was like,
Or
stop.
pressure her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now you're
And
pressuring her
listen
into
to her
doing
own
it.
intuition, right?
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
not saying, "Okay, I have to say yes or I may lose
Right.
my job at some point because
Right.
someone's gonna
Right.
fire me if I
Right.
don't take it."
Right.
Right.
She's
Right.
like, "I'm just being honest and telling you I
Yeah.
don't
She's
want
like,
it."
I don't
No,
want it.
thank you.
I do not
Yeah. Yeah.
want it.
Yeah.
Safe enough to do so. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
How often do you hear that?
Oh my gosh. This has been a fabulous conversation. And we could keep
It
talking.
has.
It's been almost an hour. Can y'all believe it?
Yeah.
But
No,
before
it's
we
great.
go, before we go, I want to talk more. You could talk more about culture. What are the red flags? Like when you go into a business and then they, ask you to evaluate. What are some of the red flags that you immediately see? And then also, have you gone into a company where you're like, y'all are killing it in the culture world? And what does that look like?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So the red flags normally when we're brought in often, or we often ask to be like, we just want to sit in one of your leadership meetings, like
Mhm.
an ELT that, a lot of, at least in our organization too, we used to have like a leadership team every Tuesday. We'd all sit around and talk about our respective departments and give updates and da 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 da. And so we like to sit in one of those kind of multi-departmental meetings and see how people interact. Who's talking,
Mhm.
who's not talking, who's allowing conversation to happen, all the information and ideas coming from, because then you start to see how people team speak, share space with each other. Are they interrupting? Are they talking on top of each other? Are there microaggressions
Mhm.
going unchecked in that room? And so
Mhm.
the first thing we do, and I'll see red flags, finger pointing, talking over people, and not in an enthusiasm way like we've been doing, but like in a kind of coming on top of somebody's
Yeah.
point and
Yeah.
taking over the room and dominating. So I call that kind of the rudeness of a meeting. So
Mhm.
those are red flags right away. And then the other red flag, and maybe it's more of a pink flag, is when I have to teach people what culture is not. Like, it's not free
Mhm.
lunches. It's not, swag. If you can swipe it with a credit card, that's a perk. Culture is far more in the architecture of how it feels to work and collaborate and build inside the
Yeah.
organization. Flags are if you're not able to have conversations, if you cannot coach a CEO and give them feedback without them taking it personally and retaliating. Huge red
Mhm.
flag. If they don't allow you to have access to the leader because they're
Mm,
surrounded in a buffer, that to me feels like information is not getting its way up to the top. Green flags for me are anytime an individual or a leader reaches out to me and says, I don't know what our culture is, but I want to make sure that I'm aware of it and it's performing. So that's a green flag. And then when we come in, when leaders are set who list their vulnerabilities, they're like,
yeah.
so I have a
Mhm.
tendency of getting really anxious when I don't know what's going on and I can over annoy people, whatever. But it's really the green flags are they're curious, they're honest about their own shortcomings, and they're willing to take a lot of the blame.
Yeah.
Like they're willing to own
That is so
participation.
key.
Yeah.
That is
Mm,
so key is when you're aware self-aware to the point that you're not threatened by the fact that you're a human being who
That's
makes
right.
mistakes,
Yeah. Yeah.
who
Yeah.
just has stuff,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? Oh my gosh, what
And
a
so when
beautiful
people aren't
thing.
comfortable with feedback, if they're not comfortable being vulnerable about
yeah.
what their worst traits are and they don't know what their worst traits are or their best traits, then that starts
Mhm.
to be a flag. But all flags can be reconditioned if they want
Yeah.
to.
If they want to.
If they
Yeah,
If
want
they
to.
want
and
to,
it's a
Gail.
choice. Yeah,
That
it's if
should
you
just
want
be the
to.
name of the podcast today, if they
Yeah.
want to.
If they want
If
Because if
to.
you
you
shut up,
want to, you
I
yeah.
love it. I
hey,
love it.
It's the way with anything you do in your life. If you want to make a change in your life, your career, your relationship, anything, you can do it all if you want to. And you're taking the risk and you're betting in it. And you're
Hmm.
like, if you want to, you can.
and you're
Yeah.
taking the responsibility for changing it
Yeah,
yourself
for the
too, and
outcome. But
not
be
shifting the
gentle.
blame like, "Oh, so
Yeah.
and so won't let me." Well, no,
Yeah.
the only so and so that doesn't let you is you.
That's
Yeah.
right. You
Yeah.
gotta own it. You gotta bet on
You
yourself
gotta
and be
lead.
okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
indeed.
I love this.
Gosh.
This is so good, y'all. This is
Yay!
fun.
This was
We'll watch it
great.
again.
Thank
We
you so
will.
much.
We will. This was, yeah.
It'll be
Loved
great.
it.
We'll do it
This is a
again.
lot of fun.
Let's do it every month. Let's just chat about our newest thing that we're frustrated with.
We're gonna add another co-host to the
Yeah,
Choice Wisdom podcast. Let's do this.
fantastic. Let's do it.
This is fun. Well, thank you for
Yes.
being with us today. And I am sure we will be seeing amazing things coming out of River, and
Yeah.
you'll have to keep us posted
Yes,
in the future.
ma'am. I will. We will. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for the collaboration and the conversation and allowing it to be natural.
Yeah.
So
Thank
Yeah.
you.
kudos to you both.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Choice Wisdom Podcast. The opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the owners or producers of this podcast. The information shared on this podcast is intended to inspire you, but it is not presented as financial, legal, or medical advice. Choice Wisdom is edited by the amazing marketing team at It's a Good Sign, our sponsor located in Dallas, Texas. Copyright 2026, all rights reserved. For more information, please visit choicewisdompodcast.com.